A lot of people think that in business, being for purpose means that you can't be for profit, that a business has to choose between the two. Caroline from Coffin Co proves that you can have the best of both worlds. For over 6 years, Coffin Co has been operating a successful business whilst also making the world a better place. Tune in to find out how. So tell us a bit about Caroline and Coffin Co.
Okay, so I worked in branding and design as a creative director for most of my career.
Okay.
And then I founded Artisans of Fashion in 2011, which was a sideline, but I became absolutely enamored by the communities I was working with across India and Nepal. And at the heart of Artisans of Fashion, which was a social enterprise, my mission was to raise awareness of the traditional craft skills and the stunning textiles. And the idea was really to facilitate collaborations with designers and look at how we could bring prosperity to the artisans who, I mean, they live in dire conditions, really. And, bring prosperity to the artisans through the international market.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I still do that. That still bubbles along because it's my passion. Cloth & Co was then born out of the work we'd started doing with a number of women's cooperatives and self-help groups in India. We'd set up some training programs, block printing in rural communities. We're designing products for the contemporary market, so empowering these women. However, they didn't have the market access or the know how to get there. And so we felt a level of responsibility, but it was also at that point, in fact, it was Daisy, who's my daughter. She and I basically decided this was something we wanted to do, and we're both passionate about working with these women. And we thought, well, let's build a business that had a higher purpose. So it really came from that. Daisy studied international business. She's got a master's, and with my creative, we just thought, well, let's give it a whirl. And it was really to change people. Predominantly, we felt that we could make a difference in these people's lives.
Yeah, fantastic. Seems like the power duo there with the mother-daughter team, which is always exciting.
Oh, yeah.
And how long has Coffin Co been running for now?
So 2014, we started Cloth & Co. But probably 2014. It's evolved over time. We've sort of just navigated through the various things that we're working on, and being closely connected with the communities, you sort of respond to their needs as well, and you're constantly questioning, what are we doing, how are we doing it, is this actually fundamentally shifting the dial? It's definitely something where you need to be making really conscious decisions, not you're working, people's lives are involved, and you feel responsible.
No, without doubt, and it's a really humbling story to hear. And one thing we'd like to touch about today is about purpose-driven businesses, and I'd love to hear more about from you, like, what is a purpose-driven business, and what are the key qualities, and why does it matter to you?
Well, I mean, a purpose-driven business, I guess it's one where the priorities are focused on other outcomes besides profit. I mean, most people establish a business thinking that, you need to make a profit. Well, you do. I mean, fundamentally you do. But I think if the passion and purpose is derived from another source, and that I believe it's in the DNA of the business, it's the why, the reason you exist. And often, well, I imagine it's based on the founder's belief system. So it's being able to live out your belief systems, and business is a powerful way to invest in doing good and making a difference. And a business can play a powerful role in changing the lives of people and having a positive impact on the environment. There's a professor from Oxford University, and he says, the purpose of a business is to solve the problems of people and planet profitably, and not profit from causing problems.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So you think, well, really, this is more relevant today than ever, because the the focus on climate change, biodiversity, sustainability, social consciousness. You know, we're all becoming much more aware. You know, I think when we first founded Cloth & Co, in some ways, you know, certainly those topics, words were not, you know, they weren't sort of buzzwords that are flying around now that are becoming obviously more than buzzwords. I think, you know, with pandemic, it's given people time to really sort of think, wow. I think that uncertainty has made people question the role of companies, and, you know, in some cases look for people to blame. You know, there's a lot of anger about corporate greed. You know, people asking why you know, companies exist, and, you know, the notion of being very clear about why you exist, and, you know, how you can play a constructive role in society and in the community, I think is becoming more and more important for people. So it's not just something that comes from, I mean, I wouldn't bother being in a business if it wasn't something that I felt passionate about. You know, I mean, it
needs to be intrinsic for you.
Absolutely. You know, I think if you spend so much time working, if it's meaningless, or you don't feel like there's some other outcome other than profitability, I don't think there wouldn't be any reward in it for me.
And one thing I saw there was all great points. So one thing I wanted to touch on, something you sort of mentioned at the start about with the purpose-driven businesses, because what you tend to see a lot nowadays is businesses that aren't for purpose tend to generate a profit, and then in the back end will donate X percent to charity, or they'll loan the charity after the fact. Where it sounds like what you're doing, it's more so intrinsic and holistic in that, yes, you know, you can sort of donate to charity, you can partner with social organizations, but you guys want to do it throughout the whole process, not just sort of the last 2% of profit. You go, okay, let's give that to charity X.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think that was something where big corporations particularly would do this. I mean, gosh, I came from a marketing background. And, you know, there'd be someone in marketing that's thinking, oh, wow, you know, we want to make a difference, or we want to do something really meaningful, but it would be a CSR thing, you know, and that obviously became a big thing for corporates to donate a certain percentage of profits to charity. But at the end of the day, you can donate, but if you're doing a whole lot of harm in the background, you know, like a mining company that's just, destroying, you know,
defeats the purpose a bit.
Well, then it's sort of like, I don't know, sometimes it's a bit like, to me, I see that, and I don't want to be too cynical, but it's a little bit going to church and praying for forgiveness, you know. You know, it's probably not politically correct to say things like that, but, you know, I believe people do want to do good, but unfortunately in the last, probably, you know, it's really only in the last 60 years that this whole sort of corporate greed and the mass production, I mean, it's such a short period of time in our existence that this is happening. And I think it's more that people have just got onto the treadmill and don't even realize the damage that they're doing or the impact that it's having. But, you know, human beings are intrinsically good, I believe, and
I agree,
and want to do good. But when you're working it's more of a framework, isn't it? When you're working in a framework that you don't actually realize until you sort of lift your head up and go, oh, hang on a minute, what am I doing?
No, fascinating. And just sort of moving on from that sort of key point there, in terms of running a purpose-driven business, I'd imagine there would be unique challenges compared to sort of not purpose-driven businesses. Can you share some of those in running and growing purpose-driven business?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, if a business is purely profit-driven, or you know, the purpose is an afterthought, then the decision-making tree it will be very different. You know, some of the main challenges that we face, you know, when you measure decisions against your core values and principles, and those decisions have a negative financial impact on the business, it's, you know, you have to be conscious and mindful, and it's a balancing act to ensure the business remains profitable, because I mean, let's face it, if the business is struggling financially, then we're limiting the positive impact that we can have.
Okay.
Which, I mean, that's absolutely, I believe, that a good, profitable business can have a much greater impact than a business that struggles financially and dips its toe in the water here and there. For us, supporting our suppliers has been a huge challenge during the pandemic. Basically, we work with marginalised communities, mostly businesses that have no financial buffer, and they certainly don't have any government safety nets. So in many ways, we've had to navigate their business challenges with them, as well as our own immediate challenges. We've had large sums of money tied up with production that has been delayed for months. So we've really had to pivot our business to ensure we get through this period so we can continue to support our suppliers and artisan groups.
And sorry to cut you off there,
That's all right,
Caroline. For lack of a better word, would you say you almost take on the burden of some of their problems in their countries? Being in Australia, tend to be in a more privileged position. Again, I don't technically mean the word burden, but do you see where I come from? Maybe you might take on their challenges and add them to your challenges basket.
100%. Yeah. So I mean, our relationship is pretty much, we collaborate with our makers. I mean, they're running their own businesses, and that's important too, that they have that responsibility and accountability. But we're taking a risk. If anything goes wrong, we actually wear the costs. We work through it with them, and we obviously, but whether it's a loss in time or lack of product or the actual cost of the goods, I mean, and then I think you need to be really innovative and flexible. And then I spent a lot of time trying to preempt what could go wrong and then try to mitigate it for everyone's sake, and many conversations with people saying, there's this risk. What you need to do, you need to flag it. Any problems, don't feel that you can't tell me that there's an issue, because if I know early, there's a good chance that I can, help us navigate through that, because I know what my tolerance levels are and how we can manage another outcome. I mean, we've turned throws into scarves, we've over-dyed things. There's always a way around these things, but usually it's because you don't know until after the fact that it's really that's when it really becomes a problem. But look, but for us, we've actually built some really strong relationships with our customers. They've in turn supported us through these challenging times as well. I think we've tried, one of the things that we do is, in the same way that we say to our suppliers, you need to talk to us, we try really hard to keep our customers informed for the same reason, because sometimes it's more frustrating not knowing, I think. So I think that I think that's probably one of our greatest challenges in being purpose driven and mindful of the people that we work with, the impact on everybody through the chain. And we're constantly explaining that too. It's not just about us. We need to do the right thing by our customers, and explaining, because I think when there's a disconnect between the artisan or the supplier or the maker and the end customer, they don't understand. And so I'm always saying to them, we're all links in this chain, and we're all responsible for each other. And if we all thrive and prosper, then that's the end game. That's what we want. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody wins, which is
absolutely
what we want. Yeah. And in terms of now, seeing a rise, especially like you mentioned, in recent times, of a lot more social movements, whether it be for climate change, poverty, inequality, recently Black Lives Matter. But sort of how can business be a catalyst for change in the significant global issues we're facing? And probably the most pertinent one at this stage is climate change, but happy for you to go down any other sort of movements in that regard.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think, it's without a doubt that businesses have the capacity to influence positive change. I mean, more so, I mean, collectively, we as individuals, are a powerful force. If we, and more and more people are becoming, active in this space. But I think what a business does is can influence that because of their actions. So through supply chain, through social media, through having a louder voice, and number of influencers. I think that businesses and the decisions that we make. So it's more about, that not just by not harming, but to actually set out to do good. And, if by virtue of doing business, there is any negative impact, also looking at ways to offset this. For us in the garment sector, where, making clothes is hugely important to, economies of developing countries, with factories providing jobs for millions of people. There are brands obviously out there exploiting workers and being complicit in this, and, working with sweatshops, which that's what we're all hearing about now, in order to increase their profits. But I think there are so many ways, that you can actually change that circumstance. What we should be doing is ensuring that we treat the people with the same level of respect and support that we would expect. I mean, I think that's as good a measure as you'll get. And therefore providing dignified employment and a respectable income, making sure that that you as a business work closely with your suppliers to ensure the source of the fibers, the fabrics, all the materials and dyes that go into your products. That's one thing. You just need to continually ask questions. Obviously there's certifications, but when you work in the artisan sector, artisans can't afford certifications. That's a corporate thing, or that in itself is very difficult for rural artisan communities.
Yeah, it's far too expensive.
Well, it is. And, some of the communities we work with, these are Indigenous skills, and they've been harvesting their silkworms, for example. I work very closely with a community in Assam. That's what they do. It's been part of their culture for generations and generations, and for them to be certified, I mean, that is just, it's. I hope that being able to be transparent and actually show from seed to stitch that these people can actually, not have to get caught up in that, whole sort of corporatizing, sustainability and ethics. But I mean, they certainly do have a place, though. I mean, I'm an advocate at one level, but when it comes to the artisan sector, I think it's very difficult. That is a challenge. But for environmental impact, I think we need to look to ways that you can not only minimize the harm, but also how you can invest in innovative ways to recycle, reuse, regenerate, source alternative materials, and offset any harm through carbon offset programs, which is something we do. People often sort of say, oh, but why do you're importing from India? Well, the thing was that the whole purpose of our business from the get-go was to actually work with these communities. And so, yes, we do import from India. So we do, we've partnered with Offset Earth for our carbon offset, and we plant a tree for every purchase.
Okay, awesome. That's fantastic, Caroline. And one thing that sort of really struck me there is that, one thing that a lot of people don't tend to realize is that you can do good and have a good business at the same time. Some people think that it's like it's one or the other. You can either have a a business that is, for profit, but then it can't really be for purpose. Whereas it seems like here you can be for profit, for purpose, and sort of have that sort of winning approach to everyone. It's like, business isn't a zero-sum game, which is, I guess, like this sort of epiphany I've had sort of working with Stride and changing other people that, what I do and sort of the purposes with Stride. And I dare say it's probably a similar feeling you've had with other people. And maybe you had those thoughts in the past where, maybe it was a bit more of a zero-sum game, but I think Coffin is a beautiful example of, it can be what would be the opposite of zero-sum game?
It's
a whole-sum game.
Yeah, look, it's absolutely, it has evolved, and I've had to go through that whole thought process myself. I mean, actually, when I first started out with Artisans of Fashion, it almost felt like profitability was a dirty word, and that you couldn't possibly profit from working with these communities. And really, I mean, gosh, you learn so much when you're in business and when you do actually recognize. And now I sort of think, gosh, how could you have really thought otherwise? Of course, everybody should benefit. It should be win-win, and profitability across, right through the line is essential. It's what keeps economies going. We want these communities, we want these people in developing countries, we want those people to thrive, and they should have pride in their work, and they should turn up to work and enjoy what they do. That's not just a privilege for people, for us to have that choice to enjoy our work. It should be universal. I know that sort of seems utopic, but that, so much has happened in the last 60 years, as I said. So I don't see why that can't change, and that's where businesses can influence that outcome.
Yeah, fantastic. And I couldn't agree with you more in that regard. And just in terms of sort of work towards wrapping up with our last question now, what are the key drivers for Cloth & Co as a business, and how do they impact the day-to-day operations of Cloth & Co?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the key drivers for us are obviously to have a positive social impact. To, and it was always from the outset to provide ongoing employment, support cooperatives and businesses that provide training, most specifically for women, which is a big focus of ours, so that they have a future beyond today, and that they're employable as skilled workers as opposed to doing backbreaking or meaningless labour, which generally speaking, that's what happens. So, that's our key priority. Obviously, to create quality products that are timeless and long-lasting. If you're going to produce a T-shirt, it needs to last. It needs to have an impact on the people that produce it. Right from the source of the cotton. And then we like to think our products are doing good. They're tactile, natural fibres that have been produced with care. They make people feel good about wearing them. And ultimately, we're providing positive options for our customers and doing good for both the people and we work with and the environment. This impacts our day-to-day operations because, we have to be constantly ensuring we're living up to our own expectations, responding to issues and challenges in a mindful and considered way, understanding the impact we're having on every touch point and person we're connected with, ensuring the best outcome all round.
No, I wish more businesses had these KPIs because they're ones you don't have to hear too often. Really humbling to hear. The customer obsession and just how conscious you're. I don't know whether you call them KPIs per se, but you mentioned how these are the key drivers for you. So, that's fantastic, Caroline.
Thank you. They are, I guess, in traditional terms, they're KPIs, but I liken the business to just being, it's very personal for us. And I think that, yes, we've had to apply business rules and frameworks. Certainly, it's something that you have to do, but on a basic level, they're actually personal belief systems for us, that, why do we do it? Okay. Why do we do this? And what it means to us.
Exactly, and I think it all comes back to what you first said at the start about how you can only do something and run your own business if you're passionate about it, and just how intrinsic Coffin Co is. So I guess we've done a full circle there, and sort of bringing back what you said at the start and connect it to what you just said at the end there. And I think that's sort of a beautiful sort of way to finish, Caroline. And was really humbling to hear more about sort of Coffin Co and your journey, and just how conscious every step that yourself and Daisy take in the business.
Oh,
and
thank you so much.
big thank you for your time today.
So much. It's been really great to chat with you.
No.
Okay,
my pleasure,
Jordan.
Caroline.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you like what you heard, please leave a nice review. And if you have any feedback or want to recommend a guest, and yes, that can include You Love Yourself, please email me at jordan@stridestore.com.au.